Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 14 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you, and a couple creepy ones, especially the last one. Stay tuned. Case file number 3072, written by SillyAid5342. Street names and static. I was out for a walk a few years ago, and as I was passing neighbors' mailboxes, rural, I noticed the addresses were off completely, with the wrong street names as well as numbers. The feeling of the whole walk was eerie, and I turned around and headed home. Then another incident when I was riding with my wife, taking her sister to the bus station. My wife's dad was driving. We were just around a corner from my house. It was late at night when we passed a man walking down the road, and he was illuminated by our headlights. He was pixelated entirely. He was even partially translucent. He made no indication of our presence, and he never looked towards us as far as I could tell. As he walked by, my eyes never left him. He stayed pixelated even in our taillights. I nearly said something to the other three occupants of the car, but as I turned back to looking forwards, I noticed no one else seemed to notice or acted as though it was an ordinary thing, so I kept quiet until I was alone with my wife later. She said she never saw anyone, while giving me a funny look. She only made a comment about me being weird. I think this is a case of reality for that individual, not loading properly. He may have even been a transfer from a different universe, and in full corporeal form, not just his soul, which I think does happen. Might even explain the dead pocket servers, where if it's a soul transfer, you don't have to have a staging area like that. But if it is a full transfer, like in this case, I think, yeah, the person was being loaded into, but the input to other people in the area wasn't simultaneous. So you were getting it first, but not complete. So that's why he was pixelated. It was just slowly loading in, like when you try to load an image and it's slow on your computer over the internet. Just slowly rendering in. If you had stayed there for maybe 5 more minutes, I'd guess, 10 minutes, I don't know the timeline, an hour, I don't know how long it takes to download a person. But yeah, if you had stayed there, you'd have just seen him load in slowly. I wonder from his perspective, was a transfer seamless? Like, he's still in the dead pocket world, but then when he's fully loaded in, then everyone just materializes. Case file number 3073, written by JV, Twin Ends of Memory. When I was a kid years ago, I remember a local motel that had the same name as a motel about 30 miles away. I recall thinking it was odd because it wasn't a chain of motels, and it was the only two I had ever seen with this particular name. Years later, after the one closer to me changed ownership and changed names, I remember mentioning it to my father, my brother, and his girlfriend at the time, as we were driving by, that those two motels had the same name years ago. They all told me that motel had never been named that, and my brother's girlfriend actually lived very close to that motel and passed by it often. I was dumbfounded. I clearly remember them being the same name. I don't know if this is a case of me just being mistaken, or if possibly certain places can seem connected or give the same vibe. Usually in a situation like this, I would just think I'd been mistaken, but I still think about this years later, wondering what in the world happened. I really don't think I was wrong. I think this is a classic case of either quantum immortality or just multiverse sight, where you're both correct. Your brother's girlfriend, everyone else in your group basically saw a different thing, but that's okay. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you probably saw a different universe. If it was your original one, or if you just saw into a different one and that was reset for you. My guess is because this was an old experience, and you probably saw this motel, both of them, multiple times, it's probably quantum immortality. And I don't think there's anything to fear about that. My guess is very few people exist in just one reality their entire lives. That's an interesting question, What is the percentage of people who are born in one universe and never ever die and make it all the way to their, natural aging conclusion, dying of old age in all universes, but just in that particular universe they reach the end without ever having transferred? My guess is a very small percentage because it's pretty easy to just accidentally die, unfortunately. Case file number 3074, written by Random User 419. 7 on the grill, 9 in memory. a few of my friends and I went fishing for a weekend. We rented a cabin and we had 2 full days of fishing on 2 different lakes. The first day was not quite a success. We only managed to catch a total of 9 trouts among the 6 of us. The next day, however, was really incredible. We pulled off our 10 trout limit each for a total of 60. Now, here's where the glitch comes in. The first day of fishing is over, and we're headed back to our cabin. It's about 4 p.m. We have our 9 trout with us. There are 6 of us, split into 2 boats of 3 guys, and we only caught 9, remember. I personally got 4, and I was the only one on my boat to catch any, so there's the first 4. On the second boat, 1 guy got 2, and another one got 3. The details are important here, as it's not so difficult to remember catching so few trouts on a single day, right? So, as we're unpacking at the cabin after a long day, it was also super windy and partially raining. We obviously get to show off our catches, compare them and whatnot. There's obviously 1 bag of 4 trouts from the first boat and 1 bag of 5 trouts from the second boat. The plan was to cook them for dinner. After measuring the trouts and celebrating our few catches, we start playing games and cracking open beers before starting to cook dinner. At around 7 p.m., we decided to start cooking our precious fresh trouts. One of my friends had brought some sort of portable smoker, so we definitely wanted to try that out. We explicitly set aside the 2 biggest trouts for smoking. We set up those in the smoker and started. On my side, I'm in charge of the barbecue, so in the meantime, I prepare the rest of the trouts in aluminum foil and season them. The thing is, I might not have noticed at that moment, but I prepared only 5 trouts for the barbecue. But there should have been 7 left after setting up the 2 biggest on the smoker, right? So, we end up eating 2 smoked trouts and 5 grilled trouts on the barbecue. But then we wonder, hey, weren't there 9 trout? We forgot to cook 2 of them, right? Funny at first, but then we started looking for the other 2 trout and we literally never found them. We looked in the fridge, freezer, barbecue, oven, coolers that we brought on the boats, every room, every drawer and cupboards in the cabin, and it's not like there could have been many places for 2 12-inch trouts to be stored or anything. We ended up searching both cars, even outside around the cabin, but it remains a mystery. They literally disappeared, and we have absolutely no idea at all where they went, still to this day. Now, may I remind how obvious it was for us to be absolutely certain that we caught a total of 9 trouts among us 6 guys, not just by catching them individually, but by bringing them back from the lake, measuring all of them. I mean, the 6 of us have got to look at the 9 trouts all at the same place at the same time inside the cabin, between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. Also, yes, there was some beer involved, but not before we got back from the lake with our trouts in hand. Also, not everyone was drinking, so it's totally unexplainable. The best explanation we have is that Jesus took those 2 trouts from our timeline to feed his disciples over 2,000 years ago. I went fishing with my dad many times when I was young, before I was even a teenager and when I was a teenager. It's actually my dad's birthday today, so happy birthday, Dad. If we caught 9 trout in a single outing, I mean, it would just be 2 of us, so you could still say 3 or 4 if you equalized it. That would be a hell of a day. We didn't have the best luck in terms of catching 40 fish or something. That would be crazy. But we'd often cook it right on the shoreline, and freshly caught fish like that is divine. Unbelievably good. So yeah, what happened to those fish, I don't know, but still a great haul, I would say. Basically a fish each, plus 1 extra. Workable. If you get some rice, lemon juice on that, not bad. Don't know about Jesus using the other 2, but who knows. Case file number 3075, written by Bright Elderberry, 98. Breadcrumbs of Fate. I've been apartment hunting for a while now. A few days ago, completely out of the blue, I got a strange message on my phone, not even sure how or from where. It basically said, "If the silver owl shows up, it's a sign, look for it." That line stuck with me. Silver owl. I even screenshotted it because it felt so weird and oddly specific. Fast forward to yesterday. I went to view an apartment that looked great on paper. When I stepped onto the balcony, I was taking in the view. a lot of trees and nature. But then I glanced down at the balcony across from mine. There it was, a silver owl statue, just sitting there, looking right at me. It hit me instantly. That's the owl, the one from the message. I was like the universe was confirming, this is the place. Out of curiosity, I looked up the street name. The street is named after a man who was a wealthy bank director. He never married, and get this, he donated his entire fortune to support young Christian women. And here's where it gets really weird. My mother's grandfather actually lived on the same street back when he was alive. And now, completely separately, my daughter has also moved to that same street. So 3 generations of my family, my ancestor, my daughter, and now me, all end up connected to this one street? And I only noticed because of a mysterious silver owl message on my phone? Coincidence, fate, a glitch in the matrix? I don't know. But it felt like the whole situation lined up too perfectly to be random, like some kind of breadcrumb trail laid out just for me. Well, the most pressing question is who sent the message? Was it a message from your guardian angel? One of your other family members, passed away ancestors that just wanted you to reconnect with the history of that location? I don't know. Very mysterious way to nudge you along the lines, like a silver owl statue. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that eternal question of who sent you the message. You need Harold Finch on the job, if you haven't seen Person of Interest, great show. I won't spoil it, but just to know he has access to a powerful tool to help him answer the question. Case file number 3076, written by Seabird Song. The Chili Incident. One day, I was alone in my old house doing the dishes, and I had a crock pot of chili on the counter, beside me to my right. I had the TV on, which was in the living room to the left, so my head was turned to the left watching TV while I mindlessly scrubbed dishes. I was rinsing a glass and it was totally calm and quiet in the kitchen with just the TV from the other room. Suddenly, there was a huge crash and I turned my head and the crock pot of chili was in the middle of the kitchen floor, fully upside down, lid off and unplugged. So perfectly upside down that most of the chili was still inside the crock pot. Like, dude, the counter wasn't wet. The crock pot wasn't on the edge or sliding around or anything, and it landed like 4 feet from the counter in the middle of the kitchen. I didn't bump it, and I didn't hear a thing moving next to me until the moment it hit the floor. Weirdest thing that's ever happened in my life. I was right there, and there was no goddamn reason for that to happen. Later, a glass soap bottle we had exploded out of nowhere. Hubby and I were in the other room and heard a crash. Went into the kitchen and the bottle was in tons of pieces all over inside the sink. Again, nothing has been wet, nothing in the kitchen was moving. We didn't have a dishwasher or anything that was vibrating the counter and stuff like that. The glass bottle didn't have a topper and was just full of dish soap, so it's not like there was a buildup of gas in it or something. There was no reason for it to go boom. We called it our countergeist. Okay, if this happened to me, I'd be gone. Cancel the lease, sell the house. Probably don't mention there's a countergeist there. You know when you sell a house, you have to disclose if there's something wrong with it, like if there's rot or if there's bugs or if there's an infestation of some kind. I don't think you have any legal obligation to disclose if there's a poltergeist haunting it though. That'd be funny if one day in court they have to arbitrate this where someone didn't disclose that it was haunted, but they knew. Probably should do it even if you don't have a legal requirement, but that's just funny. Your Honor, they didn't tell me it was haunted. Case file number 3077. Written by Macaroon C. 3646. Close enough to touch. Mom and I were about to step onto the escalator, but noticed the man and his wife were about to cut in front of us. I slowed down to let them. But then they slowed down and let my mom and I get on first. That's why I took notice of them. Mom was 1 step below me to the right, and I was standing to the left, so effectively we were blocking people from passing. As Mom was to my right, I could notice the man and his wife in the corner of my eye, and realized maybe Mom was blocking them because they stood very close behind us. You know that feeling when someone stands really close to you? I had that the whole time until they vanished. We were already around halfway up the escalator, so I asked my mom to step in front of me to let them pass, but as soon as she did, we felt that no one was behind us anymore. Both her and I instinctively looked back and realized we were the only two people on the escalator. We both looked around and couldn't see the man and his wife. We initially thought maybe they walked off the escalator, but realized we were already halfway up, so we would have heard them walk down and it was a long walk. So we would have seen them unless they ran, but again we heard nothing. Even though I didn't see them clearly on the escalator, I knew someone was behind my mom, as I could see and remember the shadow in the corner of my eye. My mom said she definitely felt someone was behind her the whole time, until she walked in front of me. The strangest thing still was this is a very busy local mall, and for two of us to be on this empty escalator around 2 p.m. is just weird. As soon as we got off the escalator, both Mom and I kept questioning, did we imagine those two people, or was it a glitch? Or did they or us slip into a different dimension? The most logical explanation would be that they never got on the escalator, but the shadow I saw in the corner of my eyes when I spoke with my mom, that's the presence I felt. But why did both my mom and I feel people behind us, and then instantly both of us felt that no one was behind us anymore? We both literally looked back and scanned the escalator, questioning where did those two people go, at the same time. Case file number 3078, written by My HD Sport 1, saved by Smoke and Steel. I was a vending attendant. I picked up and loaded a company van, drove 50 miles, stocked and pulled money from vending machines, and made change for a factory on their breaks and lunch, plus sold fresh donuts to the workers. One day, I decided to go check out a new Walmart that was a few exits down. After driving on the interstate a few minutes, I decided that I didn't have time to go and get back before break to make change, so I got off the interstate and got right back on to head back. All of a sudden, there were flames coming from under my hood, so I stopped, jumped out with a tiny fire extinguisher, sprayed the flames, and they went out just as my extinguisher ran out. I was relieved. Then a truck drove past me and whoosh, the air ignited the flames again. I didn't know what to do. Then a man came over my shoulder with a large extinguisher and put the flames out. I've always said that you would never see me climbing into a truck like a hitchhiker. I would walk. I'd not chanced my parents never finding me or being chopped into little pieces, but my job was on the line. He offered to drop me off and I said, okay. I immediately felt a little at ease because I heard truckers on the CB and one said I was insulting vulgarity, and the driver turned it down and basically apologized. He said, where are you going anyway? I said, Portland. Oh yeah, me too. Where about in Portland? Highway 109. Oh yeah, me too. Where are you going? Thomas and Betts. Oh yeah, me too. What time you gotta be there? 11? And started holding my breath, seriously considering jumping out of the truck if he said, me too. I really do believe that was the longest a person could possibly wait before turning the steering wheel, and finally, he veered and took the exit. So then I said, wow, this is crazy. What business do you have at T&B? He said he had to make a delivery. He pulled up to the break room and I had not told him where to go. I said thank you and asked his name. He answered me, but I don't remember what he said. I asked him what department he was delivering to, and he said, maintenance. I told him thank you and wrote down or remembered at the time what was on the truck. When maintenance came to break, I told the supervisor that I needed the information from their last delivery. He looked at me strangely and said he had not had any deliveries at all that day, in fact all week. I asked if he was sure. He said absolutely. So I asked all the departments about the recent deliveries, and there were none from any departments. I truly believe that the next guy to stop and help me would have been a psycho killer, but instead, my guardian driver saved my life. Logically, he could have just been me-tooing every question so as to not make me think I was inconveniencing him. But the fact that a man stopped who took care of me like this amazes me, and that he knew exactly where the T&B was. He never got 1 inch out of line. For me, it was divine intervention, and I am blessed, but it was still very eerie. I think the fact he knew exactly where to go, is, for me, proof that this was a guardian angel. Probably the truck driver was a normal guy, but the guardian angel took over him temporarily just to drive you there. Then the truck driver probably was completely befuddled and confused when the guardian angel left, and he was just like, where the hell am I? What happened? He has his own glitch story because of that. Case file number 3079, written by Aggravating Panic 555. Ashes in Arcade Games. A really creepy guy used to come into a convenience store I worked at near my university. He used to talk nonsense about being the king of the night and stuff like that, and said he could get anyone to do what he wanted them to. He was older and pretty charismatic, and also had some money, but me and another employee would joke about him being flucked in the head. Look out y'all, it's Glenn, the king of the night! We had video games at the store, and he would hang out there and play them or watch others and sometimes pay for their games. He latched on to this wayward college kid who was also a bit whack and who always asked for matches but never bought cigarettes. I worked a graveyard shift, so there was often nothing going on after 2:30 a.m., beer 30, so I would hear them talking, creepy arch pontification that made me wonder if they were playing Vampire the Masquerade or something else. We had lots of that kind of LARPing activity. Sometimes they would leave together. Later, the older dude stopped coming in, but the younger guy kept coming for matches, enough that we started charging him for them. Sometimes he would burn them off in the parking lot. One night, he came in and got matches, and a while later, there was a big fire with many fire trucks headed the way the guy usually left. I found out in the morning that this guy had ended his landlord and burned her house down. He lived in the basement. The very next night, the king came back and was extra creepy. Up until then, I hadn't seen him in months, and he shows up the night after his little buddy murdered someone? He brought it up and said that he was sad that the younger guy probably had to go to jail. I called the police about it right after he left, and a couple times more, but they didn't seem interested, as they had already caught someone and got a confession. I only saw him one other time after that, years later at a concert where I was working security. He gave me the most twisted grin and walked off out of my sight. That dude straight up gave me the chills. Though, come to think of it, this might not be the creepiest thing I've ever witnessed. It's a tough call. Case file number 3080, written by Dangerous March 9841. Wet Prints in the Dark. I was asked to be the one to look out for my aunt's house, a 4-story house, including basement, with 9 rooms. My aunt and her family went abroad that time, and the only people left in their home were me and my grandma, their mom. She's too old to travel. So, one time, after washing the dishes and closing the doors and the blinds, I went to the living room to watch a TV show. All the lights are almost out at that time except for the lights outside the house. Something urged me to go check the windows on the 4th floor. In order for me to be able to go upstairs, I need to turn on the lights which were located on the 1st floor and the living room on the 2nd. So while I was walking halfway through on the stairs, I saw some footprints of a child, like wet, flucking footprints. Upon seeing those, I immediately rushed downstairs where my grandma's room was located. I didn't bother going back to the living area to turn off the TV. Mind you, they are only house standing on their street. They are surrounded by vacant lots and huge trees. To this day, I still don't know how the fuck those footprints got there. Case file number 3081, written by Ms. Robin Hood. 3 Fields from Civilization. I've always loved to go exploring all my life, and during high school, one of my many adventures was to a silo. I'd bike to a dead-end road, chain my bike to a tree, and go for a long walk all alone in the woods, which ended in far-off fields of farm fields. 3 fields away, I'd go explore a very old silo in the middle of the fields, surrounded by a miniature forest. This place was completely isolated. Not one house or piece of civilization could be seen. I loved finding antiques there, like old bottles, a 1930s car, extremely old piles of junk, and old shoes sticking out from dirt mounds. On the 3rd time I went solo exploring around the silo, Something happened that I will never forget, even after 15 years. All of a sudden, I started to hear a few whispers, which grew louder, multiplied by the dozens, until it sounded as if I were in a ballroom filled with people speaking. I couldn't make out anything, but it sounded as if I was suddenly surrounded by a large room of people at a party, laughing and enjoying themselves. As quickly as it started, it stopped and faded away into nothing. I did return to that field one more time, but nothing like this has ever happened to me again, but I will never forget. I think there are spots in the world where the multiverse information can jumble together. So, people talking, that's just information at the end of the day, and that can probably permeate very easily across the multiverse membranes. I think that's what's happening. There's small bridges, gaps in those universes that can connect to each other. Probably not the entire gamut. You'd have so many voices going on there that it would sound louder than a nuclear bomb. The pressure wave would be quite something. But yeah, just a few universes, maybe even entwining into their past in that area. Not the future. I don't like going to the future stuff, but in the past, yeah. Or just that area maybe developed in other universes and you're connecting to those. There could be a ballroom, a wedding place, a hotel, who knows, a restaurant, maybe. Case file number 3082, written by Pose27. The Wrong Man Saved. This story was told to me, but I believe it's true and one of the eeriest things I'd ever heard. My father-in-law had a friend who went to Indonesia. The jungles there are dense and it's easy to get lost, so normally you go out with a guide. The first day, the man did have a guide, but thought he was an idiot and didn't know what he was doing. So he wrote this in a postcard to his wife and mentioned the next day he was going out alone because the guide was useless. Well, he never returned. His wife, realizing she hadn't gotten a call from him in a few days, the card hadn't arrived yet, called his hotel and found out he hadn't been there for days. So authorities sent out search parties, but it's vast and tricky terrain and they found nothing. What's eerie is the wife gets desperate after a week and consults a psychic out of desperation. The psychic says yes, she sees a man who has fallen into a ravine, but they must hurry as he is close to death. The psychic even pinpointed the ravine. Search parties go to the place and sure enough, there is a man with 2 broken legs at death's door. But it's not her husband. It was some hiker who also went out alone and they saved his life. The husband was never found and presumed dead after some time. Years later, they did find his remains. I forget the circumstances, but he succumbed to the jungle. I just kept thinking about that psychic who saw a guy in distress and saved his life. At least he was lucky. We know that there are plenty of people who fake being psychic because it's a good way to make money. You just have to push out some vague idea of the person and they become satisfied. Like, oh yeah, how did they know that? Well, there's ways to look up information about the potential client that comes to you. It's like the mentalist trick, just analyzing the person, being observant. You can pick up a lot about a person just by what they're wearing, how they carry themselves, etc. Not always correct, but close enough where you can definitely make some money scamming people. There are real psychics too. I think that's pretty clear. I think this is a perfect story of that. Though, even those who can harness that power at will, it's not perfect. Like in this case, she did find someone that was in need, which is awesome. That's incredible. But not the specific person that they were looking for. Very sad, but also, sad and not sad for the person that they found and saved. Case file number 3083, written by JBakes21. Her eyes never left us. When I was a kid, my parents went on a cruise and my brother and I were left staying at our grandparents' house. One of the nights, we were up watching Animal Planet, and our grandpa came in and told us to shut it off, and it was time for bed. It was about 11:45, so we went to bed, but my grandpa left the hallway light on, just illuminating the hall enough to see a little bit. Now, the layout of the bedroom is substantially important to how this played out. You go down this hallway, and at the end of the hallway is our grandparents' bedroom. Off to the left, before the hall ends, is a spare bedroom. The bed is at the back right corner of the room and is very open, so you can see everything from the doorway. I woke up sometime later to my brother whispering my name and asking me if I see that, and I look over to the doorway to see a woman, probably mid-40s. She was very bizarre looking, with a very long and thin face and long brown hair, but imagine a hairstyle out of like the 70s. I want to say just standing there staring at us. Her hair was blowing like there was some sort of gust, yet there was no wind. Our grandparents' dog had been sleeping next to the bed, and she woke up. Her ears perked like she acknowledged that there was someone there, but after a minute just laid back down. She just stood there staring at us for what felt like the longest time before eventually backing out of the doorway, her gaze fixated on us until she was completely out of view, leaving the door slightly open, enough for us to see her go back towards the front of the house. For a while after, my brother and I just sat there, absolutely petrified, just waiting to see if maybe it was my grandma and she'd eventually go back to the bedroom, but no. Seen nothing for what was probably an hour, and eventually we fell asleep. We asked about it the next day, and my grandma swears it wasn't her. Not that it would have been anyway, as she looked nothing like who we saw, and she's also not the type of person to really joke around like that. She doesn't like being scared. If I was the only person that saw this, maybe I'd be able to brush it off and something that I imagined in some odd fever dream, so long ago. But no, my brother saw it too, and if you were to ask him, he'd give you pretty much the same story. Case file number 3084, written by Unlikely Bag 69. An angel in uniform. I grew up in an incredibly conservative Christian environment, and when I was a teenager, my school in the Oklahoma City area had us go door to door selling religious books. The adults who drove us around and dropped us off were overly zealous and always trying to just get a few more sales in, even if it was past time to round everyone up and finish for the day. One evening, it was about 9 p.m. We were supposed to have been picked up for the day, but our driver said one more street. So she dropped me off and I was supposed to work my way over about 6 blocks to meet a classmate. It was dusk and not a great area of town. I knocked on one door, and 2 guys answered who were obviously drunk and high. They wanted me, 15 female at the time, to come inside the house. I refused and was trying to make my way off the porch, but one of them grabbed me by the wrist. I was trying to break free when a policeman in full uniform walked by on the sidewalk and asked what was happening. The guys immediately let go of me and slammed the door shut. The police officer asked me what I was doing out there at night, and I explained. He walked me about 1.5 blocks away to a gas station and told me to wait there until my leader came back into radio distance. She had left the radio area, so I couldn't call for help before. He then just disappeared. I don't really believe in people seeing angels on Earth, but I firmly believe that a police officer saved me that day. Whether it was just happenstance that he was walking by in uniform, no patrol car anywhere that I could see, or it was an actual angel who kept me from being attacked that day. I'll never forget the weird but oddly protective feeling afterwards that I had, just avoiding something absolutely awful. Well, this was deeper in the past, and maybe it was more normal in especially your environment in Oklahoma, conservative area, to have just cops patrolling on foot. It is conceivable, but it does seem a bit unlikely. So was it a guardian angel event? Could be, another possession, taking control of a cop that was nearby. Maybe their patrol car was a few streets away or something. If they were alone, that makes more sense. If they had a partner, the partner was like, where the hell did this guy go? Where'd my partner go? Knowing what was going to happen, or probably what was going to happen as your guardian angel. Just take control of this guy, go diffuse the situation, save you. Yeah. And explains why the cop just left so quickly. I mean, if it was an official police action, there would be a report filing. He'd probably take you to the station, get you to identify the people that were trying to assault you or kidnap you even. I think if it was official police business, it wouldn't have gone down quite like that. Case file number 3085, written by Nix. Wolf on the Crest. So, back when I used to live in Oregon, I had this place I hand-built over a month or so in the summer. I would hang out in it. This was inside the forest. It was my home away from home, basically. I built a large fire pit in the ground, 2 chairs, a bench, a log rack, drying area, a hammock, store-bought, and even a small Viking-like structure with a mat on the inside made of twigs so you could sit in it. This spot I made was next to a hot spring inside a flowing river with a tiny waterfall. So as dumb as it is to be alone in the wilderness, I always brought my little gun and bear spray too. I just like to be in the forest. It made me feel close to nature like my ancestors were. Cherokee. Now the story. One day, I was heading out there when I noticed a male watching me walk into the area of the forest I would always enter from. This kinda made me feel uneasy. I don't trust men all that much. Anyway, I ignored it, but kept my hand on my hip where my firearm was as I walked and hiked to go to my spot. Everything was normal on the way there, except I heard a few branches break behind me every so often, so I was constantly checking. I am used to that sound and animal sounds, but something about that guy made the solace the forest always brought me break. Once I finally arrived at the spot, I set my things down in a small shelter and raked some leaves and other things out of the area with the small rake I built. Once I did that, I decided to dip into the spring. I set my bear spray and gun on my clothes next to the water and got naked. Nobody ever comes there. It's not a trail or on any map, so don't judge. I dipped inside and tried to relax. Well, the moment I finally let go of the paranoia, the forest went completely silent, which if you know better means there's a predator around. So I turned my hands near my items and just silently waited. It felt like forever, but I started hearing an odd noise. It sounded like someone yelling, "Help!" But lots of animals in distress sound weird when dying, so it didn't spook me. But going further, I heard twigs snap again closer to me, which is odd for a few reasons. 1. Mountain lions will almost always make zero noise when checking you out. 2. If it was a bear, I felt like I would have heard it make some noise, but nothing. When a few moments passed on the crest of my little area, I noticed a wolf, I think. It was large and resembled a dog, but it was almost all black fur, just staring there at me. I grabbed my gun in my right hand and the bear spray in my left, just to be safe, but nothing happened. After about 10 minutes, I think it left. I decided to call it a day for my safety, so I gathered my things and left. As I left, the forest was silent. Still no animals, no birds, just a small gust of wind, maybe once in a while. And I felt awfully dreadful, like it felt as if the world was rotting away, if that makes sense. Anyway, after a few, I exited the forest and that guy I saw earlier was standing at the edge of the forest as well. Not near me, but a little ways away just staring into it. I walked till I got to my motorbike and left. To this day, I will never forget that odd feeling of dread when I was there. It physically made me feel like I was going to be attacked the entire time. I don't know. Eerie story from the life of me, Nix. You have a daring soul, I will just say that. You're going out there alone as a woman, presumably, and the deep wilderness, well, maybe not ultra deep, but deep enough, where you're alone, out off a beaten path. You built your own little settlement there just to hang out, which is pretty cool. But yeah, noticing a guy watching you, almost stalking you, and having that creepy vibe when you're walking to your settlement. Even I as a guy, would just turn around like, it's not worth it. You can't relax in that case. I guess you did for a brief period of time. And what was the wolf going on? It's almost like the wolf was calibrated to the person, like he was warging it in like Game of Thrones style to stalk you. Probably nothing like that, but yeah, maybe a whole set of unfortunate coincidences that really nothing was actually after you. And yeah, you did have a firearm and bear spray, so you had protection, but still, it would be just hard to relax in a case like that. Thankfully, nothing happened. I don't know about going back. You have to go back when you know no one is around. Like, if you go and you're in the parking lot and no one is around, or no one, there's other cars but no one is watching you, okay, maybe try it then. But always be careful and maybe get a dog. That could be a good idea. Now time for the jokes of the day. The title for the 10th Fast and Furious movie leaked today. It's going to be called Fasten Your Seatbelts. Breaking news. A man was admitted to the hospital today with 25 plastic toy horses inserted in his rectum. Doctors have described his condition as stable. My wife beamed with pride and said, "I never thought our son would go so far." I said, "Yeah, this trebuchet thing is amazing. Get our daughter." Hopefully they have a soft landing somewhere set up. I was engaged to a girl with a wooden leg, until I broke it off. The grocery store had a sign that said, "Free fish," but I wasn't excited. I knew there would be a catch. Alright, monthly compilation for September up here. Check it if you haven't already. You want to fall asleep and all that good stuff. Otherwise, like the video and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.